My millionaire husband brought his ex to my brother's luxury wedding, and what happened next made him regret ever underestimating me. Stay with me till the end, because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about how a woman learned to stop being silent when love started to feel like humiliation. My name is Kaylin Pierce. I'm 30, an interior decorator from Dallas, and until that weekend, I thought my marriage was solid. My husband, DeAndre Holt, was the kind of man people admired, tall, charming, the self-made tech millionaire who knew how to light up any room. I loved him for years, believed in him when he had nothing, and now that he had everything, I thought we were finally at peace. My younger brother, Malik, was getting married to Zaria Benton at this gorgeous mountain lodge in Asheville, North Carolina. It was the kind of event you saw in magazines, string lights, mountain air, everyone dressed like money. I wanted it to be perfect for him. A week before the wedding, DeAndre told me he'd invited a former business consultant to join him. He said she was just someone who could help him make new connections during the wedding events. I didn't think much of it then. I trusted him. But when I walked into the pre-wedding dinner that evening, all that trust cracked in an instant. Sitting right beside my husband, laughing softly at something he said, was Talia Wynn, his ex. The same woman he once told me was a mistake from the past. I froze for a second, trying to process it. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the music playing. DeAndre stood up, smiling casually, and introduced her like nothing was wrong. Kaylin, you remember Talia, right? She's just helping me out with some business matters. Talia turned to me with that smug, too sweet smile women use when they know they're crossing a line. She hugged him a little too long, her hand brushing his chest like they shared a secret I wasn't supposed to know. I forced a polite smile and nodded, but inside, I felt something sharp twist. It wasn't just jealousy, it was disrespect. The kind that burns slow, steady, and deep. Throughout dinner, Talia kept laughing at his jokes, leaning close, whispering things that made him grin. My brother noticed. My cousin Janiyah kept giving me silent, worried looks. Everyone could feel it, but no one said anything. I stayed quiet too. Not because I was weak, but because I knew silence could be stronger than any outburst. I didn't want to ruin Malik's night. Not yet. But as I watched my husband pretend everything was normal, I felt something shift inside me. This was no misunderstanding. It was a test, and he had no idea I was about to make him fail it in ways he'd never forget. At the rehearsal dinner, everything looked perfect from the outside, soft lights, golden table settings, and music floating through the air like warmth. But at our table, there was a storm no one could ignore. Talia sat right beside DeAndre, whispering things in his ear and laughing so loudly it made heads turn. I could see her red lipstick glinting when she leaned too close, her hand brushing his arm as if she owned him. Every time I looked at them, my chest tightened. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, to not cause a scene at my brother's wedding. My cousin Janiyah sat across the table, catching my eyes with a look that said, "Girl, I see what's going on." She mouthed, "You okay?" And I nodded, pretending I was fine, though my throat felt heavy with words I couldn't say. DeAndre kept acting like nothing was happening. He poured Talia a glass of wine, laughed at her stories, and only turned to me when someone mentioned my name. "You good, babe?" he asked, with that same smooth tone he used when he wanted to shut down a fight before it began. I just smiled back, the kind of smile that hides pain so deep you can almost taste it. By the time dinner ended, I could feel eyes on us, whispers, sideways glances. The air was thick with awkwardness, and I hated that it was all happening during Malik's big weekend. I excused myself early, saying I wasn't feeling well, and went back to our suite before anyone could stop me. When DeAndre came in later, I was sitting by the window, still wearing my dress, staring out at the dark trees. His cologne mixed with something new, floral sweet. Talia's perfume. It hit me before he even opened his mouth. "Kaylin," he said, tired and slightly annoyed. "What's the problem now?" I looked at him and said quietly, "You really brought your ex to my brother's wedding. You sat with her all night like we weren't even married." He sighed and ran a hand through his hair, like I was being dramatic. "She's helping me make some connections, that's all. Don't start something here, okay? I can't have you embarrassing me in front of your family." That last line stung more than I expected. Embarrassing him? As if my feelings were just noise in his perfect image. I didn't say another word. I just turned away, my reflection in the glass looking like a stranger, silent, tired, and done trying to understand a man who didn't respect her. When he finally fell asleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every red flag I'd once ignored came back like ghosts. The nights he worked late, the secretive texts, the way he stopped asking how my day was. I thought I'd married my partner. But now, I was starting to realize I might have just married his ego. The night was calm, but my heart wasn't. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Talia's face beside DeAndre's at dinner, the way they leaned toward each other like old lovers sharing secrets. The air in the room felt too heavy, so I grabbed a shawl and stepped outside for some air. The mountain breeze was cold against my skin, carrying the soft sounds of music still playing from the lodge. I walked toward the terrace, letting the quiet wash over me. But then, as I reached the edge overlooking the garden, I heard low voices near the gazebo. I stopped. At first, I thought it was just guests talking, but then I recognized his voice. DeAndre. And then hers. Talia. My breath caught. I moved closer, careful not to make a sound. The moonlight stretched across the grass, and I could see their silhouettes standing too close for comfort. Talia's laugh floated through the air, soft and familiar. You married safe, not happy, she said, her tone dripping with that confidence only a woman who knows she's crossing the line can have. DeAndre's voice came next, low and deep. You always knew how to get under my skin. Those words sliced through me. I felt like someone had punched the air from my lungs. He sounded warm. Familiar. Not like a man keeping professional distance, but like one remembering old feelings. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, gripping the wooden railing so tight my fingers hurt. The ache in my chest was unbearable, but somewhere beneath it, something stronger began to form. I took out my phone with shaking hands and quietly hit record. The conversation went on small talk, laughs, her asking if he ever missed the excitement they once had. He didn't deny it. He just sighed and said, "Sometimes I wonder." That was it. The last piece I needed to stop doubting myself. I stepped back slowly, careful not to let them see me. My legs felt weak, but I kept moving until I was far enough away to breathe again. The night air felt colder now, sharp and biting, but it helped numb the fire in my chest. I walked back inside the lodge, past the smiling pictures of my brother and Zaria on the hallway tables. Their joy made me ache even more. I slipped into my room and sat on the edge of the bed, replaying the recording once, just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. His voice was there, clear as day. And so was hers. A part of me wanted to cry, to break down, to scream. But I didn't. I just sat there quietly, staring at the floor. My tears dried before they could even fall. That was the night something inside me changed. My heartbreak didn't destroy me, it sharpened me. I wasn't going to be the quiet, forgiving wife anymore. I was done swallowing my pride for a man who didn't deserve it. I found Malik by the patio later that afternoon, talking with the wedding planner about the seating chart. The sun was warm on the mountain air, and laughter drifted from the bridal suite. Everything looked picture-perfect, exactly how I wanted it to stay until I was ready to ruin only one man's peace. "Hey, little sis," Malik said, pulling me into a quick hug. "You doing okay? You've been kind of quiet." "I'm fine," I said with a calm smile. "Actually, I was wondering if I could make a small speech at the reception. Just a quick thank you to you, Zaria, and the family." He grinned, not suspecting a thing. "Of course, Kaylin. You've earned that right more than anyone. Just keep it under 5 minutes before the DJ starts." "I promise," I said softly. "It won't take long." He laughed and went back to his conversation, while I walked away feeling the steady hum of purpose under my skin. I already knew what I was going to do. Later, I found Brandon Miles, one of DeAndre's business associates, sitting in the lounge checking his phone. He looked surprised to see me. "Kaylin," he said, smiling politely, "you surviving all the wedding chaos?" "Barely," I said with a light laugh. "Actually, I was hoping you could help me with something. DeAndre mentioned you were handling the paperwork for one of his new charity funds. I just wanted to make sure everything's squared away. I've been updating our joint tax files, and I didn't see the transfer." Brandon looked confused for a second. "The Youth Tech Scholarship? He already moved that money last month. Didn't he tell you?" I tilted my head, pretending curiosity. "Moved it where?" He scrolled through his phone, completely unaware of the storm he was feeding. "To his private trust account. Said you two agreed it'd be easier for management purposes." The air around me seemed to still. I smiled through the punch to my chest. "Right, yes. I probably just forgot. Thank you, Brandon. You're always so organized." He chuckled. "Anytime. You two make such a power couple." I excused myself before the bitterness in my throat could spill out. The moment I stepped outside, the fake smile fell. My hands were cold. He'd moved our joint funds, without a word, without permission. I'd stood beside him, loved him, supported him while he quietly took what we built and claimed it as his own. I sat on a bench near the garden, the laughter from inside fading into a low hum. For a long minute, I just breathed. Then the calm came again, the kind that follows when pain hardens into decision. My plan was clear now. I would let the wedding go on, let him believe he still had control. But at the reception, in front of everyone, he would learn that I wasn't the quiet, obedient wife anymore. This time, I'd be the one writing the ending, and he'd have no idea it was already beginning. The wedding morning unfolded like a dream painted in gold. The lodge was dressed in white roses and champagne ribbons, the mountain breeze carrying the sound of violins. Zaria looked breathtaking in her gown, Malik couldn't stop smiling, and everyone floated in joy. I made sure I did too. Every word, every gesture from me was calm, loving, flawless. I was the picture of the perfect wife, graceful, unbothered, untouchable. DeAndre looked stunning in his suit, confidence radiating off him like sunlight. He was talking to guests, shaking hands, pretending to be the devoted husband beside his successful wife. But I could see through every glance, every twitch in his jaw. He was uneasy, wondering if I was still angry or if I had moved on. The truth? I hadn't moved on. I was preparing. And then there was Talia. She arrived in a silk blush dress, one that shimmered with every step she took. She laughed loudly, stood too close, and watched DeAndre like he was something she owned. I caught her eyes once across the garden. She smirked, like we were sharing some private joke. I smiled back. My kind of joke would come later. Throughout the ceremony, DeAndre tried to act composed, but I noticed everything. The way his gaze flickered toward Talia when he thought no one was looking. The way his fingers drummed nervously against his champagne glass. The way his smile faltered every time I met his eyes. I made sure to record little pieces of the day. Just small, harmless clips on my phone. DeAndre adjusting Talia's necklace, their shared laughter near the bar, their bodies leaning too close as they whispered something only they could hear. To everyone else, it looked like casual mingling. To me, it was proof, tiny pieces of the puzzle that would soon expose him. When we posed for photos, I stood beside him, my hand resting lightly on his arm, my smile soft and natural. Inside, I was cataloging every move, every look that told me how far he'd fallen from the man I once knew. By evening, the ceremony shifted into celebration. The band played upbeat jazz, guests danced beneath strings of fairy lights, and the scent of wine and laughter filled the air. DeAndre seemed to relax, convinced that the tension between us had dissolved into the festivities. Even Talia looked smugly comfortable, sipping champagne, laughing like she had already won. But I had never felt more in control. Beneath my calm smile, I could already feel the pieces sliding into place, the recording, the photos, the speech I'd requested. Everything was ready. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, I looked around the glowing lodge. The people dancing, the candles flickering, the man beside me smiling for a world that didn't know the truth. Everyone thought the drama was over, that the quiet wife had accepted, forgiven, moved on. But they were wrong. The night wasn't ending, it was just beginning. And this time, the stage belonged entirely to me. The reception hall glowed under soft amber lights, laughter and music weaving through the air like silk. It was perfect, at least for everyone else. Guests swirled champagne, Malik and Zaria moved across the dance floor like a fairy tale, and I sat at the head table beside DeAndre, smiling like a woman who had everything she wanted. Inside, my heartbeat was steady. Cold. Ready. When Malik tapped his glass and called out, "My big sister Kaylin wants to say a few words," the crowd clapped. DeAndre looked up, surprised but pleased. He had no idea that his perfect night was about to end with his own words cutting him open. I stood, my cream dress shimmering under the lights, the microphone warm in my hand. "Thank you, Malik," I said, smiling at him, then turning to the guests. "First of all, I just want to thank everyone for being here. This has been such a beautiful day, seeing my brother and Zaria begin their new life together surrounded by so much love." People smiled, nodded, lifted glasses. I let the moment breathe before my voice softened. "And before I toast love," I said slowly, "I think we should talk about truth." The laughter around the room faded. A quiet ripple of confusion passed through the tables. I could feel DeAndre's eyes on me, sharp and nervous. "Love means honesty," I continued, my tone calm but heavy. It means never making someone feel small for trusting you. It means remembering that loyalty isn't a favor, it's a choice. I reached into my clutch and tapped my phone. The speakers clicked softly, then filled the room with familiar voices. Talia's laugh. DeAndre's voice. You married safe, not happy. You always knew how to get under my skin. The room froze. Chairs creaked as people turned. My brother's face went pale. Zaria's hand flew to her mouth. Talia's smile vanished, the blood draining from her face. DeAndre's hand trembled on his glass. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Someone dropped a fork. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." I stood there, unmoving, calm as ever. Those were recorded 2 nights ago, I said softly. At the lodge terrace. I wasn't supposed to hear them, but sometimes truth has a way of finding its way to the light. DeAndre's voice cracked. Kaylin, turn it off. Now. I looked at him, really looked at him, and smiled. Oh, it's already off. Don't worry. Everyone's heard enough. I lifted my champagne glass, the gold liquid catching the light. To my brother and his beautiful bride, I said clearly, my voice steady. May your love never be built on lies. Silence hung for a moment before a few claps broke out, hesitant at first, then growing. Malik's eyes were wide, torn between shock and pride. The wedding morning unfolded. Talia stood frozen, painted, humiliated. DeAndre was dressed in white roses and champagne empire collapse. The mountain breeze. I took one sip of champagne, set the glass down, Zaria looked breathtaking away from the table. Malik couldn't stop smiling, and the truth was out, and I was finally free. I made sure I did too. Every word, every gesture from me was calm, loving, flawless. I was the picture of the perfect wife, graceful, unbothered, untouchable. DeAndre looked stunning in his suit, confidence radiating off him like sunlight. He was talking to guests, shaking hands, pretending to be the devoted husband beside his successful wife. But I could see through every glance, every twitch in his jaw. He was uneasy, wondering if I was still angry or if I had moved on. The truth? I hadn't moved on. I was preparing. And then there was Talia. She arrived in a silk blush dress, one that shimmered with every step she took. She laughed loudly, stood too close, and watched DeAndre like he was something she owned. I caught her eyes once across the garden. She smirked, like we were sharing some private joke. I smiled back. My kind of joke would come later. Throughout the ceremony, DeAndre tried to act composed, but I noticed everything. The way his gaze flickered toward Talia when he thought no one was looking. The way his fingers drummed nervously against his champagne glass. The way his smile faltered every time I met his eyes. I made sure to record little pieces of the day. Just small, harmless clips on my phone. DeAndre adjusting Talia's necklace, their shared laughter near the bar, their bodies leaning too close as they whispered something only they could hear. To everyone else, it looked like casual mingling. To me, it was proof, tiny pieces of the puzzle that would soon expose him. When we posed for photos, I stood beside him, my hand resting lightly on his arm, my smile soft and natural. Inside, I was cataloging every move, every look that told me how far he'd fallen from the man I once knew. By evening, the ceremony shifted into celebration. The band played upbeat jazz, guests danced beneath strings of fairy lights, and the scent of wine and laughter filled the air. DeAndre seemed to relax, convinced that the tension between us had dissolved into the festivities. Even Talia looked smugly comfortable, sipping champagne, laughing like she had already won. But I had never felt more in control. Beneath my calm smile, I could already feel the pieces sliding into place. The recording, the photos, the speech I'd requested. Everything was ready. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, I looked around the glowing lodge. The people dancing, the candles flickering, the man beside me smiling for a world that didn't know the truth. Everyone thought the drama was over. That the quiet wife had accepted, forgiven, moved on. But they were wrong. The night wasn't ending, it was just beginning. And this time, the stage belonged entirely to me. The moment the last echo of Kaylin's toast faded, the reception hall cracked open like glass under pressure. Conversations exploded. Cameras flashed. Someone dropped a plate, and it shattered across the marble floor. The air was thick with shock, perfume, and humiliation. DeAndre stood, his face drained of all the charm he had worn like a second skin. Kaylin, he hissed, forcing a smile for the guests. Can we talk about this privately? Please. She turned slowly, her laugh slicing through the chaos. Privately. Her voice carried across the room, sharp and cold. You already did that with her. The crowd gasped again. Malik looked torn between standing up for his sister and protecting his wedding from total ruin. Zaria's mascara streaked down her cheeks as she stared at her husband, confusion flickering between them. Talia clutched her clutch bag, trembling. She took one look at DeAndre, then at the hundreds of eyes burning into her, and ran. Heels clicking, tears streaming, past the open doors. The whispers followed her like a shadow. Kaylin didn't chase her. She didn't need to. The damage was done. DeAndre tried to follow, but his path was blocked, not by Kaylin, but by the icy glares of his own business partners. Two of them, Gregory and Mason, exchanged a look, one shaking his head. "We can't afford this," Mason muttered under his breath. "Bad press." Gregory sighed. "He's reckless. We should have known." DeAndre turned toward them, desperate. "It's not what it looks like." But they were already walking away, pulling out their phones, sending messages that would quietly cut his name out of contracts and investment groups before sunrise. The DJ had stopped the music. Guests whispered, pretending not to stare but recording every second. Kaylin could feel their eyes on her, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she lifted her chin, brushed a stray curl from her face, and gave a small, bitter smile. Her heels clicked softly as she began to walk toward the exit. Behind her, DeAndre called out, his voice cracking. "Kaylin, please. Don't leave like this. We can fix it." She turned, her gaze steady, calm, almost pitying. "Fix it? You broke something you can't buy back. You embarrassed yourself, not me." Her words landed heavy in the silence that followed. The room had turned into a graveyard of broken reputations and expensive lies. As Kaylin reached the door, a few people began to clap. Softly at first, just a few brave souls who admired what she'd done. Then louder. A ripple of applause that grew until it echoed through the hall. Kaylin paused only once to look back at DeAndre. Once the man who had made her doubt herself, now standing in the ruins of his own pride. She smiled faintly, not in victory but in closure, and walked out into the cool night air. Behind her, the applause still lingered, rising above the whispers, above the music that would never start again. Weeks drifted by like pages turning in a book Kaylin had already finished reading. The chaos of the wedding faded from social media headlines, but DeAndre's name still floated in whispers. The man whose wife exposed him in front of 100 guests and 2 million online viewers. He tried to reach her, of course. At first, it was a flood of messages. "Kaylin, please, I was stupid. Can we meet for coffee? You misunderstood everything." Then came the gifts, white roses, her favorite candles, a bracelet engraved with their wedding date. Each delivery went straight back to sender. She had already made her decision. By the time his apologies turned to desperation, Kaylin was no longer living in the penthouse. She'd quietly moved into a new apartment downtown, smaller, but full of light. It smelled of fresh paint and eucalyptus. She had chosen every piece of furniture herself, no compromises, no "we should go with my designer" arguments. This was her space, her beginning. The day the divorce papers were finalized, she didn't cry. Her lawyer, a sharp woman named Naomi, handed her the folder with a small smile. "You got what's yours," Naomi said, "including his offshore accounts. You played this smart." Kaylin exhaled, steady. "No," she murmured. "I just stopped playing dumb." When Malik visited a few days later, he brought takeout and a bottle of wine. "Sis," he said, settling onto her new couch, "I'm proud of you. Not for what you did to him, but for finally doing something for yourself." Kaylin smiled softly, stirring her glass. "You know what's crazy? I thought leaving him would feel like losing everything. But now, I wake up and breathe. I don't feel like I owe anyone my silence." Malik grinned. "That's freedom." She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. The kind of laughter that came from somewhere deep, unclogged by guilt or pretending. The apartment was still half empty, boxes stacked near the windows, but she loved it that way. It was honest, unfinished, just like her. She painted the walls herself, choosing warm creams and soft golds. Each brushstroke felt like erasing another bruise of the past. Sometimes, when her phone buzzed with an unknown number, she knew it was him. She didn't block him, though. She didn't need to. Ignoring was its own kind of power. At night, she'd light a candle, pour a glass of wine, and play old R&B songs. The silence didn't hurt anymore. It hummed with peace. Standing by the window one evening, watching the city lights blur against the rain, Kaylin whispered to herself, "I didn't just lose a husband. I found me." And this time, she didn't need anyone to hear it. Months passed, and the storm that once swirled around Kaylin finally began to settle. The tabloids had long since moved on, but every now and then, her phone buzzed with a headline she didn't need to read to understand. DeAndre Holt, the man who once stood on stages bragging about loyalty and leadership, was now a name whispered with pity and warning. His investors had pulled out after the wedding scandal. His reputation, once polished like glass, was now cracked beyond repair. Kaylin didn't smile when she heard it. She didn't gloat, didn't call her brother to say, "See? I told you so." She simply sat in her apartment, the evening light spilling gold across her dining table, and exhaled. Peace had a sound, quiet, steady, full. That was the sound in her chest now. Talia, she learned through a mutual acquaintance, had left the state abruptly after the fallout. Some said she tried to start over in another city. Others said she was living with a new man already. Kaylin didn't care. They both had made their choices. And she had made hers. For a long time, Kaylin believed revenge had to look like fire, public, loud, consuming. But she'd learned something deeper. True revenge was peace. It was walking away without raising your voice, letting karma do the talking. That evening, she cooked dinner for one: grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a glass of white wine. The scent filled her apartment, warm and comforting. She set one plate on the table, one fork, one glass. Her hands no longer trembled when she poured the wine. She sat down and looked around her small, sunlit apartment. Every corner told a story of starting over. The plant she'd kept alive for 6 months now, the couch she bought on sale and assembled herself, the painting she finished last weekend. A swirl of gold and gray that somehow felt like her soul on canvas. As she took her first bite, she whispered to herself, "Some lessons cost money. Others cost everything." Her eyes softened, not from sadness, but from understanding. DeAndre lost everything trying to win. She lost him and gained herself. And that was the difference between them. Later, she stepped out onto her balcony, the city humming below. The breeze lifted her hair, and she closed her eyes. Somewhere out there, DeAndre was probably still trying to fix his image. Still pretending he hadn't broken something priceless. But Kaylin wasn't pretending anymore. She didn't need applause, validation, or even revenge. Her calm was the prize. Her silence was the statement. She looked out at the skyline, the lights flickering like tiny reminders of life moving forward, and smiled faintly. The world didn't need to see her victory. It was enough that she did. And this time, her peace was worth more than anything money could ever buy. Do you think Kaylin made the right choice by walking away from DeAndre and choosing peace over revenge? Or should she have given him another chance? I'd love to hear what you think. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories like this one, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one.